Hi, Mom.
Are we on video?
Yes.
Oh.
We're Florence,
What are you guys talking about?
Miran, and San Remo.
He's telling me about breakfast, and you're trying to record.
Yes, I'm going to walk over and get some more of the story from
What time?
Aunt Kathy. We have an hour.
What, we're leaving in an hour?
Yes. We're going with Dimitri and Alex. Okay. Now, I only have like 2 minutes of video, so I need a summary, and then we can get into details.
Well, this was in the written history.
Okay.
That was the mother's cousin.
So you were going to say
the
we
boy
had...
that was born after her mother wrote that history. The man, I should say, that was born after Teresa. There was one more child born. There was another boy. And he wrote this history. What happened to the family.
How's this related to the seven... Who are the seven brothers?
Teresa's brothers.
And Teresa is who?
My grandmother, your great-grandmother.
Ah.
Ah.
So she's the one that came to the U.S. and then went back to... She went back to Budapest.
Yeah.
She had 7 brothers.
That's right. And great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, told the family to leave. I mean, they had to leave anyways. They had to leave the oil fields. And so she wound up, I think, in Budapest, stayed there until she died, and she made no bones about it. There was no life left for them. And most of the family, as far as I know, left. But I don't know what happened to all the 7 brothers. 2 wound up in Africa, one in Cairo and one in Pretoria. The one in Cairo was a doctor and married to a doctor. The one in Pretoria had a big farm.
These are all my great-grandmothers. Yes, brothers and sisters. Yes, the 7.
Brothers.
Brothers.
She had no sisters. It was one girl.
8 girls, 8 people in the family. 8 children.
8 children.
Great-grandmother was one of 8. Okay.
Totally spoiled.
Okay.
She never lifted her finger. She had 7 brothers carrying her around. I mean, she was a toy. We have a baby in the family, you know, and here they were in high school and college, and a baby's born.
Did you know this woman? Did you meet her? Your
yeah,
grandmother?
No.
Oh, you didn't know her?
No, almost.
Okay.
Almost. She went back after my mother married. She was disappointed. And she and my mother's sister went back, Aunt Ella, to Europe. And that's where Aunt Ella married a high executive with Esso, or Standard Oil, I guess, at that time. And they lived, well, grandmother wound up at a Baden-Baden was a resort, and she loved it. And my Aunt Ella wound up in Hamburg.
Okay.
So...
But your grandmother, what I just heard was your grandmother ended up spending about 10 years, maybe, in northern Italy.
She might have. I didn't know that about where she lived in Europe. I guess she did not live with her daughter.
Okay, right.
So I can understand. The family's always been acrimonious.
It has.
Yeah.
Why?
I guess it's in her blood. You know,
why wouldn't a mother want her daughter to marry?
Well, at that point, Aunt Ella was an adult and wanted to live her own life. And I said, Grandma Teresa was totally spoiled. She'd been taken care of all of her life. She never had to lift a finger. They had dozens of servants.
Where'd all this money come from then?
Tell you what? Well, they were wealthy before the oil was discovered.
They owned an oil company?
They've discovered oil in their land.
And so they just hired out Esso or leased out the land and the money, they didn't actually...
I don't know what happened. I never heard they were developing the oil. That's all I heard.
The land was in Hungary?
The land was in Hungary.
Do you know where the oil field was, or...?
No idea.
Okay.
It's in the... I suppose we could find out quickly enough by reading through those notes.
Okay.
That my mother translated.
Huh.
My job was to translate Mother's handwritten letters. Cramped handwriting. You know, she grew up writing 2 other languages besides English. She never learned English till she came to the United States.
Right. It was your mother, her daughter, who started the English as a second language school, who then met your father through that.
Yeah.
Yes. In Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else about the seven brothers? Do you know anything else about them?
Very little, actually.
They spread around the world.
Yeah, well, 2 wound up in Africa, one in Cairo, one in Pretoria. One wound up in Hawaii, started American Factors.
American Factors?
Yes.
What
And
year?
1904.
Yeah, so I'm thinking long before it was a state.
Oh, totally. It didn't become a state till long after he was dead.
Okay. What is American Factors?
Like Dole is
Oh.
today.
Okay.
They developed pineapple. Took them years.
Okay.
It was the biggest company. Yeah, they're written about it.
All right.
They developed a pineapple that could ship.
And this is the name Toplansky.
No, that was my grandmother's married name. The maiden name of the whole family was Balog, B-A-L-O-U-G.
Oh, okay.
And the physician in Cairo became an expert on Egyptian coins. And I have his book that he wrote when they discovered Kentucky. He was asked to codify every coin, which he did. It took him 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Thousands and thousands of coins, because they used to displace oxygen to create a near vacuum. So that's why
Okay.
there's so many coins. And
Okay.
two living slaves.
Okay.
Graphically taking the last breath out of the two.
Okay.
And one wound up in Seattle, and one wound up at the University of Pittsburgh as a metallurgist professor. And I lost track of every one of them. After Mother...
What year did someone end up in Seattle?
I have no idea.
Any decade?
Early 1900s, so they left in 1904.
Under the name blah.
Balog.
Balog.
B-A-L-O-U-G. It's a Hungarian name.
Okay.
Not particularly Jewish.
So we had 27 cousins that died in the Holocaust.
That's what I understand.
What's the connection,
That's
though?
what my mother's uncle wrote in his memoir that we all have a copy of.
Oh, but you don't know what branch, how he got there?
It was a huge family. It was a huge family. Great-grandmother herself was a member of a big family. And in those years, if you were wealthy, you had lots of children. That's why, she had dozens of servants, and she could pop out a baby a year, which is what she did, and still live well. My mother always talked about a story. She was very bitter. For some reason, girls were not allowed their own horse. And her brother, Uncle Arnold, had his own gorgeous horse. It was an Arabian, and my mother was very envious of this gorgeous horse. And she couldn't have her own horse. She could have a trap and a driver. She couldn't have her own horse.
So your mother grew up wealthy?
Well, until she was 8.
And what happened when she was 8?
Well, evidently they didn't handle the money well. They did get a certain amount of money for repatriation of the land. In those days, they were somewhat decent about it. And they decided to convert, near as I can gather, they decided to convert it to goods. They were well-versed in handling all kinds of goods. Silk, remember the silk trail? This is a big, silk was always a big deal. This was the 1900s.
Right, so this is Romanian, Hungary, and it was repatriated in some kind of...
Money, yeah.
There was a coup, revolution?
No.
And the government took everybody's money?
No. Listen to me. This was Jewish land, and it was a process called, I just forgot the word, where the government takes over a specific thing, like they're going to take over the oil well, all right?
Nationalization.
Hmm?
They nationalized.
They nationalized the oil, this particular oil field.
In Hungary.
Yes, they did pay them.
Were they Jewish?
Who?
The
Balogs?
Balogs.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they nationalized the Jewish oil fields, which they had been living well on.
They owned them.
And then that was the end of the money. So your mother was wealthy until she was 8, and then everyone went to the United States.
That's right. Well, they still had a lot of money.
Okay.
So what happened to the money? They bought a ship They loaded the ship with these goods that they were going to start a business with in the United States. And they decided they would get off in New York because the family wanted to see the United States. They heard it was, this unbelievable big country, and the railroad was open at that time. And they sent the ship around the Cape. And it landed in San Francisco the night before the earthquake. And it burned at the dock. And the insurance company declared, they were wily Jewish people. The the insurance company declared bankruptcy and never paid them a dime.
Wow.
That's right, they lost everything.
So that's where all the money went. Very medieval. In that lost cargoes have swung countries for hundreds and thousands of years. That's just the way it worked with shipping. You put a lot of value onto one ship, and if it went down and it was a Spanish galleon, or there was a famous American steamship lost before the Civil War, with something like $80 million of gold bullion off of South Carolina, that kind of thing. It swings countries.
Oh, there's no question about it, except they did have insurance, because this wasn't gold, this was material from Europe, and they were always insured.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was a normal thing to do. They didn't want to lose everything if the ship went down, and ordinarily, insurance companies covered it. Not this time. The loss was gigantic. I don't think the insurance company had enough to cover anyways.
So they turned around and went to New York.
They turned around, decided they didn't want to live in a country that had this kind of devastating earthquakes. They went back to New York and settled they settled in Bensonhurst, which is horribly anti-Jewish.
Where's Bensonhurst?
It's outside of Brooklyn.
Oh, I thought they were in. Okay. Do you know what the address was?
No.
They actually landed in Queens, the Bensonhurst section of Queens.
I think so.
Okay.
Because when Uncle Ronald became more affluent, they bought in Bay Ridge, which is way up on the scale in Brooklyn.
Your sister wants to talk to you in private.
What about?
There.
What about?
She didn't tell me. It's private.
Can I stop filming now?
If it was in private, I would know, but she didn't tell me, so it's private. Go.
Are we done?
Yes.
I'll try. 30 years I've been trying to find time to finish the translation. I started putting it on a disc. So I thought I could copy the disc and send it to everybody. His mother's handwriting is difficult, but I could read it, because I was proofreading her stuff for years.
Great. I've got a box of it. I can't read it for nothing. I told you, though, I kept it. I mean, last week I was throwing stuff out, and I didn't throw that out. I just thought somebody would be able to read
They
it.
had all the names of the towns. These are towns that probably aren't even in existence anymore.
All right.
This is years and years. 1900 is what? 2 centuries ago.
1 century ago.
Well, 18-something.
Oh, yeah, if you go back, yeah.
Well, that's what
Right, it goes back 200 years. Okay.
Your mother was born in 1896, we think. Because she lied about her age. Women did.
Right.
She evidently was older than Daddy, which was a distinct thing not to be. So Daddy always laughed. He didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But she did.
All right. You gonna go talk to my mom?
Talk to your mother. Sorry, I gotta get ready. Oh my God.